Welcome back to Kaler's Mods and Repair. My name is Mason, and in this video, you're going to see how the skid loader ended up like this. Well, for me, it's been a few days. For you guys, probably a few weeks. But yeah, like I said, back on the Mustang today. This time around, I know I had said in the previous video right at the end that we're going to work on fuel system, some hydraulic leaks, the exhaust. We're probably going to work on some of that, but I realized to do the repairs on the hydraulic system, even just to get started on them, I first have to tip this cab up. Well, start looking at it, got to undo all that hodgepodge wiring to get the cab tipped up. Then I got to thinking, well, you know, if I'm already going to be tearing around that wiring, may as well fix it. So that has moved its way to the top of the priority list inadvertently. So we're going to get started on fixing the wiring. Some of it's just going to be updating the wiring. Some of it's going to be fixing it right. We're not necessarily going to rewire the whole machine. We're just going to redo most of the engine harness and all the wiring coming out the back of the cab. So before I get too carried away here, I had promised in the last video to show you guys the messy wiring in this thing, and I did not hold up my end of that promise. So we're just going to take a look at that real quick. Right here, we got our wiring going to the alternator. This isn't so bad. You know, less than ideal. You got 3 extra feet of wire there. No problem. Just coil it up and tape it down. There's also a couple wires in there that were not used when they swapped the alternator. If you guys might remember, somebody had gone through and changed this out for a GM 1-wire alternator in a previous lifetime. So that's why we got just one connector and probably 3 wires coming out of this harness here. Down here, we have had somebody in here replacing battery cables. This is a newer cable, but it looks like the end must have got mucked up on it, so they put one of these clamp-on ends on here. This is a temporary fix, in my opinion. Now, for some people, that's not the case. Some people leave that as a permanent fix. At this point, it's not my main focus to replace this. I'm still trying to decide what I want to do for a battery, because truth be told, I kind of want to just put that GM 1-wire alternator back in here. It's just one less thing I got to deal with. So that being said, I may end up changing to a side post battery or something of that nature, like a marine battery possibly. I don't know yet, because essentially how wide this tray is about all I have to work with, and that's only about 4 inches. So kind of got some space requirements we got to meet. Moving forward, if we're looking at the positive cable, it's kind of just 40 feet too long and dangling over everything that could melt it. So we are going to address that. Haven't decided yet if I'm going to replace the cable entirely, shorten it up. I'm not sure yet. This is our 12 volts to the cab, which I haven't opened the control panel in the cab up yet, but I'm going to go ahead and guess that that is going directly to the push button and is being piggybacked over to the starter switch. Coming around here, still in the back of the machine, we got a mess. We've got wire nuts, we've got house wiring, we've got spade connectors, we got heat shrink connectors, we got all kinds of stuff. None of it's where it should be doing what it should be doing. I don't even know what this wire goes to be honest with you. I don't really have much of anything for it to hook up to back here, but this is where it's going. So we got to address that. Got some more wires that aren't doing nothing back here. I think, yeah, this was a block heater. I don't even know if it's still in the machine, if it worked, what have you. So one more thing to look at. But you can see it's coming through the firewall there, and it is just, it's a mess. It's not the worst one I've ever seen, but it's not good. We are going to update this connector to something a little nicer, something a little easier to work with. And we're actually going to add a connector and doing all this, just for the sake of keeping it simple. So as we get going, it'll make more sense what we're doing here. But I just wanted to show you guys that before we get started. So I'm only going to be working on this for a few minutes. It's getting kind of dark out already. So just going to take a second here and show you guys some of the stuff that we are going to be using in this repair and upgrade job. So I'm going to spin the camera around and show you what we get. So in doing this, something I like to try to do when possible, especially if I'm making new harnesses, I like to decide what color wire is going to be designated to a certain system. So like, for example, I'm going to have to put in a whole new run of wire for the ignition system up to the coil and then also to the distributor. So in order to do that, I wanted to pick a color wire to designate for that. So I'm thinking I'm gonna go blue. Didn't have any blue wire on hand, so went and picked up a roll. Another thing to consider is I'm cheaping out a little bit. I'm going through and just using some stuff from the Dorman Builders series. This is not a sponsor. These are just products that I've been using for a long time. It's a quick, easy way to update something, repair something, and get an effective repair that's going to last a long time. And you've got options, and I'll show you some of what you can do with that. Obviously, soldering is a great skill to have. It is something I know how to do. It's just something I don't really do very often. Not gonna lie, I find myself using this Builders series quite a bit. There are definitely some instances where I do not use that. I'd rather go to soldering. And so it's not something I don't do, it's just something I don't do as often. But one of the things the Builders series has is ready-made pigtails, and you can get them with a male and female end. So this is a more modern style connector. This is the kind that has a weather seal on it. That red part is the red part you see there is a lock for retaining the pins so that they don't come detached. And another thing is these have pins in them. So you can depin this and you can rearrange what order they're in. So some reasons for doing that might be you get mixed up while you're repairing a harness or you're building a harness, and you know, let's say pin number 1 is actually supposed to be pin number 3. You can pop that red part out and you can let that pin loose and do the same with the other pin that needs to be moved. And you just swap them around, easy as that. And then you stick that lock back in there. Looking in the female connector, it's the same way. So that already makes the harness a lot more serviceable in my opinion. And it's a lot less intrusive to the system if you have to change a pin around, or you got a wire that's not going the right way, or you just want to change it. So I've got a couple of these are 4-pin. So that's something we'll be updating to. Another thing I like to do, just for the sake of making it look nice, is when you use something like this, there are other kits out there or products you can get that are exactly like that. I'm not saying this is the best kit out there. This is just something I can get locally and it's readily available. But you'll see there's only 2 colored wires on this, even though there's 4 pins, red and black. So since I'm going to be using different colors, I just went and picked up something like this. It is a heat shrink tube kit, and it's got a few different sizes in it, and it's got 3 different colors, red, blue, and yellow. So what that'll allow me to do is when I make my connection to the pigtail, when I do that, I can substitute whatever shrink wrap I'm going to use before with the color shrink wrap that matches the color of the wire that I'm running. So it just makes it look a little nicer. That's not something you have to do. That's just aesthetic more than anything. Something else that I'm going to be doing here is I'm actually going to be eliminating the key. There, I said it, not taking it back. I'm taking the key out of this machine. It's just, once I get into the control panel, I know what I'm gonna find. It's gonna be chopped up. It's gonna be damaged. I am absolutely going to need to build an entire harness to go behind the control panel. So I'm just going to circumvent that. Somebody already put in a momentary switch for the starter, so I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to add a switch for ignition and a switch for a fuel pump. Yep, you see it. I went and picked up one of these cheap little Edelbrock inline fuel pumps. So we're going to talk about mounting these up and how to plumb them, what to do. You'll see here, it's a 38 gallon per hour, 4 to 7 PSI, and it operates on 12 volts. So this is a good fit for how I'm going to use it. I don't need a ton of pressure. If I find that I'm blowing the needle off of the seat and the carburetor, then we'll add a fuel pressure regulator on there, tune it down a little bit if need be. But this is something I've put in for other people. I've never actually used one myself because I have yet to have an application where I thought this was best suited. In this case, I have extreme space constraints for where I can put stuff. So I've got to get a small pump. I'm not going to say these are the worst pumps ever. They're not the greatest by any means, but they work. Another thing I'm going to use that I've become a big fan of, and this is also from the Builder series, is a braided wire loom. There's a couple reasons I want to use this. One, it looks so much nicer. Oh my goodness. Nothing worse than that plastic corrugated stuff. It gets old, it gets hot, it gets all crunchy, and then it's falling apart. It looks tacky in my opinion. You know, I get it. If you're trying to go cheap, it's maybe worth it. But this was actually almost as much as it was for another 10-foot roll of the corrugated stuff. This was a couple bucks more, but it's a lot better quality. Partly because it is going to provide so much better protection for the wires. We don't have to worry about this breaking down and then chafing or pinching the wires in something and causing damage to the harness. It doesn't talk about it on here, but it actually does have pretty good heat resistance as well. So you don't have to worry about that so much. And I'll show you guys how to work with this. It's kind of tricky right off the bat when you're getting used to it, but you get used to it really quickly. And once you start using it, my goodness, it looks good, it works good. Just another awesome product. So that's something else we're going to be using when we need to put in some wire loom. As far as other stuff we're going to be using, I have some of this DEI Easy Loom. This is it's a nicer version of that braided wire loom I was just showing you. This is more for like a high temp application. So I might use this for some spots where it's going to be crossing over an engine component that I know is going to be getting hot, just because of the fact that it has better heat protection. DEI is a great company to get products from, especially when you're dealing with like heat shielding. They've also got Velcro on heat shields, they've got heat blankets, they've got mats for floors and firewalls, and they've got all kinds of stuff. A lot of good products. You'll see Vice Grip Garage use a lot of this stuff as well. And another channel that likes to use DEI products is Finnegan's Garage. Mike Finnegan from Roadkill, he uses a lot of DEI as well. And then just a lot of miscellaneous wiring stuff I've accumulated from other jobs. You know, I got a roll of 14 gauge black wire, roll of heat shrink tube, some more assorted sizes of heat shrink tube that's pre-cut, some more of that. I don't really use these butt connectors anymore. It's just something I've had laying around. What else do we got here? Some eyelets. Yes. Okay, so this is the other thing I wanted to show you from the Builder series. In fact, let me see. Yeah, here's my kit. So this is what I like about this Builder series, and we'll come back to this as we go along here. But this is kind of the Builder series master kit. What it is instead of those cheap butt connectors that you never really get a good bite with, you get these insulated, essentially it's a metal tube, and it's color coded for the gauge wires that it works with, just like those butt connectors would be, but it's solid metal on the inside, it's insulated, and then has a metal jacket again. There's a stop inside there, kind of like those butt connectors, but what makes these work a lot nicer is instead of having the heat shrink kind, or the kind that you just leave open on the ends, as you're splicing the wire together, you put one of these little pieces of heat shrink in there. Makes it a lot nicer. Another thing is maybe you've been doing something like doing spade connectors or eyelets or something along those lines, and you notice when you put those on, sometimes you have trouble getting them to crimp right when they fall off, and then you got to cut it again, or you got to add a new one in, and then you're using them up. This takes all the guesswork out of that, because you know exactly where the wire's ending up, you know exactly how well it crimps, and then you just heat shrink over it. And they've got all kinds of stuff here. I don't have any in this kit, but they do have spade connectors, and I did pick some of those up. All right, so I got everything kind of cleared out here so we can start working, and I dropped the instrument panel down so you can see where the wiring is coming into the cab. And this is mostly the old harness, and then they've got some overlays coming into here. I've already unhooked these front two lights. This isn't as messy as I thought it was going to be. Everything's orange or red, so that's kind of a downer, but we'll make it work. We'll figure something out here. So I'm gonna start moving out some of these zip ties and get some of these trimmed out so I can disconnect those lights. That way I'm only hanging on by this bunch right here. Make it a little bit easier for me to navigate how I want to do this. So I'm going to throw you guys on a time lapse and get back with you. All right, so just want to jump back in here real quick. This is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. These don't make good connections. Now granted, this was working. This was working. This kind of junk, I'll tell you what's under here if we pull this tape off. It's just twisted together. In fact, let me just switch guys up for a second. Yep. Oh, there is a connector in here. They taped that to waterproof it. But let me just show you here. This isn't gonna last in the long run. This is gonna fail. So what we're gonna do in this case is I'm actually gonna trim some of this casing off, and then we're gonna patch in here. We're gonna replace this with a black wire so we get some uniform wiring in here, and we'll still maintain that same ground. Then we're gonna redo this power. All right, hopefully you guys can hear me better. I got some microphones to improve the sound quality here, but I've been just chipping away a little at a time with the wiring. It looks kind of messy right now, but I've replaced any of the chafed wires I found so far up to this point. I'm going to redo these connections here because the wire's a little loose in the fitting, but I have consolidated it to where it's a little bit safer, a little more manageable. Right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come around behind the machine into the engine bay, and I'm going to cut that connector off where it comes out of the cab. I'm going to leave it hooked up so I can make sure all the wires go into the same spot. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start patching in the new end. That way I can run new wires where they need to be, and also get the new sheathing. We're going to go with that. Get that on there. And then from there, we'll start working on the harness back here at the engine, because when in Rome, may as well get it done while we're at it. And then from there, I actually was able to find another used pump. So the leak that I was talking about in the previous video, you can kind of see right back there where that arm's coming up. That goes into a hydraulic pump right there. The seal on the end of the shaft is leaking, so when the machine shuts down, it's puking out fluid. So what I did was I actually went and got a new seal kit to reseal this one. But what I'm going to end up doing is I'm actually going to replace the seals that look suspect on that new pump, and we're actually just going to flip the cab up. We're going to yank that one out. We're going to toss the new one right back in there in place of it. So save us a little time, and then I'll end up getting another seal kit and rebuilding the pump that comes out. The reason I'm not just, tossing it or selling it as a core is there's two pumps here. So there's that one there, and then there's an intermediate block, and then there's actually a second pump that goes on the back of that. And so they're in line with each other. So it's the same pump twice, just one has a different block on the back of it than the other. So I'm actually going to rebuild the one that comes out, and then I have a spare if one of the other ones starts leaking or goes out again or something like that. And then vice versa, if I have to replace one again, tear it apart, see if it's worth rebuilding, throw a new seal kit in it, put it on the shelf, then I've got another hydraulic pump for next time. Also, we're having a little bit of change of plans here, and it's a change I like. I didn't necessarily want to put that electric fuel pump on there. I'm not a big fan of them. But it was the option that I was having to look into at the time because I could not find a replacement one of these pumps. However, the parts machine I went and looked at to get that pump uh, also had a rebuilt engine that had a rod bearing spin in it. And they had just replaced that fuel pump. So it was a brand new fuel pump. And the machine had no time on it. So I managed to snag that fuel pump while I was at it. So we're actually going to keep it mechanical for the time being. And yeah, I'm a little bit happier about that because I don't like those little cheap electric fuel pumps, and I don't want to go through the process of setting up a more permanent and correct type of fuel pump. Had somebody tell me about a paint I could use to correct this that was going to be the same color. It was not the same color. It also didn't spray on very good. But it's a little warmer today, and I've got another project you guys don't know about yet that I really need to get to before it gets too cold or a bunch of snow on the ground, something like that. So we're kind of hitting the crunch time. We got to get this done, at least done enough to be ready for winter. So let me set you guys up and put you on a time lapse, and we'll go from there. Well, I got that snipped out of there. So the reason I left the connector hooked up back here, I had mentioned it, but I'll just point it out again. The reason I did that is so I know which colors were going into the connector and what color they need to land on out here. So one of the things is this machine definitely did not spend its life in a good environment. You know, it was exposed to the elements, it was exposed to, you know, chemicals and manure and all that kind of stuff. So it looks like this thing's done up with a bunch of white wires. It's not. So, like, this one is red. This one is actually supposed to be purple. You know, this one, well, this one is supposed to be gray. So that's still good. One of these is supposed to be, I think, yellow. Another one's orange. So that's part of why I want to redo this. Now, if I don't have to replace the wire, if it's in good shape, I'll probably just fix it at the end of the wire. Or if there's a break in it or something like that, just leave it intact. I don't usually like doing that, but wire is expensive right now. It's like $12 for 10 feet, or you can get the big roll of 14 gauge or 16 gauge, I mean, for like $25. It's not cheap. So, you know, a few years ago, if I was running into a harness like this where you couldn't tell what color the wire was or it was all butchered up, I would have pulled the entire harness out of the machine and completely redone it. But in this case, especially with this shrink wrap uh, loom, I guess, it's a pain to get off. If the wire is not damaged, I'm just going to fix it where it is damaged or where the end is visible so that I know I'm getting a good, clean connection. And if something's going wrong, I can look back on my notes for what color wire does what, and I can reference off of that so that I can go back and test the harness or test the component that it's going to, so on and so forth. So we've got the harness pulled through here. I'm going to try to get this sheathing off of here. The wiring inside the sheathing, I've already checked it, it's okay. I would like to completely redo that sheathing if I can. It might not be an option at this point, but we're going to try. And then once I'm happy with how it's going, then we're going to put on those new connectors. Um, so I got to dig through this, make sure I've double checked where everything goes at the end of the harness, and finish making the connections that need to be made here. and then we'll figure out sheathing this harness, replacing wires. Like these, they gotta go. I know what these ones do. This is power in, this is signal to the starter. Those have got to go. Those are getting replaced, at least from, here down. And then I'm still not quite sure what this wire was doing. It wasn't actually hooked up to anything, it was just kind of there. So I got to run that back, make sure I know what that wire's doing. And then, yeah, just a lot of going back and forth and figuring all that out. So I'm going to do a little digging here and I'll bring you guys back in a bit. So I thought I'd show this quick. This is that braided wire loom from the Dorman Builder series. So this stuff's nice and thick. It's nice and knitted. And another thing about it that's really nice is it doesn't have one solid seam like the corrugated stuff. So you can kind of see it actually loops around itself multiple times, and then it forms this kind of net that holds up a lot better over time. You'll see there's something that looks kind of like that already on the machine. That was more of a shrink style that they used back then, and it wasn't bad. It just, as the years go by, it degrades. So far I've had this stuff on things that are open air, open to the elements, not any kind of protection at all. Now granted, this cab isn't going to be much protection, it's open sides, open roof, but it does provide some shade and some shielding from the elements. But putting it on, it's not as quick as the corrugated stuff, I guess. You get it started, and then if you got your wires bundled up real nice, I wasn't able to get the old sleeving off. It's just so shrunk on there and hard. I was going to do more damage than I was caring to do at that point. But you kind of just go along, get it in that first loop, and then just kind of wiggle it around on there. Like I said, it's not exactly the quickest, easiest thing compared to that corrugated wire loom, but this is going to last a lot longer. It's going to provide a lot better protection from both the elements and chafing. This stuff does hold up the heat pretty good too. Like I was showing before when we were starting this, I do have some DEI braided loom that I'm going to use in some spots around the engine. That just holds up a lot better overall in a hot environment, but this stuff works wonders for keeping wires safe and tucked away. And not to mention, look, there's your finished harness. That looks like something in a new car. That just looks nice. So, multiple benefits to it. It's by no means cheap, but the way I see it is it's an investment in making sure that I don't have to worry about this being the reason I gotta fix wiring later on. All right, well, it is now many months later. We had a very mild winter this year. I was very worried that it was going to be a nasty winter, so that's why we're inside now. This is an old barn on our property. I have gone through and there's still a lot for the electrical that I need to fix, as well as some other things. Like we're still going to get some wind noise right now. There's a gaping hole in the back of the barn right now from where there should be a barn door. So that's another thing I got to get done. But I'm tired of looking at this thing and not working on it. I've been so preoccupied doing other stuff, getting other things ready. I have quite a few massive, really awesome projects that I think a ton of people are going to like that I have coming down the pike. And I got to get those squared up so that we can get started on those. I don't like diving into things if I'm not going to be able to make progress on them. Contrary to what my family might tell you, I like getting stuff done as quick as I possibly can and getting as much done as I can. Anywho, the skid loader is inside now. So where we left off, as far as you guys saw on the machine, I was working on fixing some of the wiring. I actually just got it as done as I need it right now. There's still some stuff on the chassis side of things that I need to finish, but the reason we are starting on the wiring in this video is because I have to tip that cab up to work on replacing the primary hydraulic pump on here. So now that I got the electrical buttoned up, I'll show you guys that later on in the video, but we're going to see about getting that cab tipped up. I might move the machine. It's fine where it's at. I'm gonna go ahead and start getting the bolts out on that, and we'll go from there. So you guys will have to excuse the poor lighting right now. That's another downside to how the barn is set up currently. But I do have the instrument panel back in. I have the wire harness running down the side on the inside of the cab, running all the way down. I still got to finish looming it up right there, but that is where it goes through the firewall on the cab. And then down here, I've got all the floor pans and seat mounts out of the machine right now, so we can get good access from that side of things. But that pump right there is the one we're trying to get after. Yes, I could see about pulling all of these shafts and unhooking all of these rods and levers and pull everything back. And technically, yes, I am still gonna have to do that, but I'm gonna have a lot more room if I get the cab tipped up. Now granted, I don't have a lot of headroom up here, but it is quite a bit more than I have right there, almost negative. So we're gonna pull that bolt, and there's another one right down there that you can't see, and then the cab actually pivots on these two front mounts right here, and this entire rollover protection cab, however you want to call it, is going to rock forward and grant us better access there. So let's get those two bolts out, and then we're going to see what we can do. Well, that was very anticlimactic compared to what I thought was going to happen. The bolts came right out, and the cab is going to just tip right up. I don't feel like getting a hernia, so I'm either going to figure out a way to rig that up to where I don't have to throw my back out, or see if I can get some help, something, and see about having that cab tipped up and braced up so that we can get to work on the underside there. Okay, I got to looking at it. I think with the spot it's going to pivot on, that it's not going to hit the rafters there. I think I might be able to just climb in on top of this thing and tip it forward. Hopefully it doesn't do anything scary and come back down on me. I guess we're going to find out together. Let's see here. Just put my feet. That. There it goes. It's working. Are you gonna stay? Just stay. Don't go anywhere on me. Whew. It is just floating right now. Let's see if we can finish bringing it down here. That is way better. Let me show you guys. Look how much more room we got. Look at that. That is crazy. Now I can just come in at the side over here, and I'm not even bending over that far, just to get it all of this. Look at that. I don't think you guys can see that. Look at that. General Motors seatbelt. Only the worst. Oh, I mean, I'm just picking. I only own Fords, so I feel like I'm obligated to say that. But yeah, I might even have a Ford seatbelt I can throw in this, just for the fun of it, really. I mean, it's got a Ford engine, gotta have a Ford seatbelt, right? But we got the cab up. I'm gonna show you guys what we're after here. Get you off the stand. We are after this pump right here. So when this thing gets running, it doesn't necessarily leak much, but then as soon as it shuts off, it pukes all the fluid. So we're gonna get digging into that. Everything about it appears to be the pump. Gonna be honest with you, where it was at in the yard, I didn't have a great way to actually look at it, even with the floor pans off. So, not gonna lie, I'm speculating a little bit, but I also wouldn't be surprised if this thing got starved for fluid at some point, if the pump did have some kind of damage. So, it took a long time, but I was able to track down one of the right pumps. It was supposed to have been recently remanufactured. I bought the thing for a song and dance. These pumps, you can only get them as pairs, and it's a whole interconnected unit, and it's literally just two of the same pump with a diverter so that they connect together. And that two pumps, after I got the right numbers, $1,200 without shipping, and there was like a few months wait time on them. I'm not spending that kind of money on this machine. I know it'll be a good machine for its size when I'm done, but I'm not dropping $1,200 on pumps that I'm not even sure are 100% bad. So I went and picked that one up. I got it for 200 bucks, song and a dance. I was going to change the seal that I think is bad in this one, and then I'm just gonna, slide these back, swap that pump out. Well, I got digging into it, and I thought, I'm in here, I may as well re-gasket the whole thing. It's been sitting a while. Well, let me just show you. So here's the new pump, the one I'm gonna re-gasket. So I got into it, and I was gonna change just this seal here. This is the seal I'm pretty sure is bad on the other one. And you see that shaft is kind of chewed up, so that's not very encouraging. And then I think I peeled most of it off now, but the whole thing was silicone. I mean, just the whole thing. And this surface here is sealed by a sort of O-ring seal, like this. Here's actually, I went and got a reseal kit for one of these. There's not really any rebuilding these. There's not a whole lot to them, really. I mean, it's a piston pump. There's some bearings you can replace in them. So far, none of the bearings are bad. Maybe I'll finish tearing it down and show what that looks like. I don't think I'm going to, just because I know I don't need to with this particular machine. But yeah, so this is siliconed in here. The camera doesn't pick it up very good, but I found gobs and gobs of silicone in this thing, and there shouldn't have been any. And it was was the wrong kind of silicone too. It was like the silicone you would put around like your shower or your bathtub, your sink, whatever. So I just opted to finish pulling it apart, change all of the seals that need to be changed. I'm probably just gonna swap this shaft out. I wanted to just, pull the old pump, stick this one in, but I think I am going to pull the other pump, and we'll change this input shaft here just for the sake of knowing for sure that we're not dealing with something that's all mangled up. But yeah, so that's the story with this pump. All right, I've got the cherry picker here. I've actually decided that I'm just gonna yank the engine out. It's actually gonna be less work for me to do that than it would be to unhook everything from both of those hydraulic pumps and try and shimmy those back. I was gonna do it the other way, but I've decided I already need to clean everything underneath of the engine. I need to clean off the engine itself. Everything's just a greasy mess down there. So 8 bolts, yank the thing out, and pull the pump off that way. And then we can decide what we're gonna do about maybe switching some parts around, which pump I'm gonna use, reseal whichever pump it's gonna be, and then from there I can get to cleaning things up and get the engine tossed back in. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started on that. All right, so what am I gonna have to pull off here? Well, I do have to disconnect what is left on the wiring harness that is still connected. So like we've got this, I'm pretty sure it's a coolant temp sensor possibly. I don't even need to disconnect that really, but I'm gonna. And then there's just a couple of wires connected over here. And then the whole harness can just lay off to the side. And then from there, I actually have this bolt and one in the same spot on the other side. And then just these two right here holding the pump to the bell housing. Some of you are thinking, Mason, that's 4 bolts. That's not 8. Well, I got the 4 water pump pulley bolts too. All right, well, as you can see, I've got the 2 engine mount bolts, the 2 pump bolts mounting to the bell housing, and for the life of me, the 4 water pump pulley bolts that were retaining the water pump pulley as well as the radiator fan. So I'm gonna just wiggle this pulley off of here, and then everything else should be disconnected. I'll get my sling attached on here one way or the other. I'm not too sure how I'm going to hook that up just yet. And then we should be able to start lifting and shimmying and getting this entire engine up and out of the machine. I will say, one downside right now is, as far as not working outside, everything is in the way because I'm still in the process of getting this set up and finishing the building off to a point where I can use it. But the inconvenience does not outweigh the reward in this case. All right, there was one thing I forgot to unhook. It was the oil drain line. That was actually failing, and got that slipped off. I'm gonna get a new fitting for it though, just because it looks like it wasn't in the greatest condition. So we'll just swap that out. But we've got the engine yanked out. We now know that the entire oil leak we were facing was the seal for the input side of that primary pump. So I'm debating if I should still pull that pump out and tear it down. It doesn't look like it's leaking anywhere else. Now that I've got the engine out, I can see very clearly we don't have any lines leaking, aside from that oil drain line that was leaking. But I don't know. I've got some thinking to do about that. But yeah, I'll show you guys here. Look at how much filth is in the bottom of this thing. You know, with the light the way it is, you can't see, but it's, I mean, right there, it's a couple inches thick, and then, you know, at least an inch thick throughout most of this, and just piles and piles. Oh, hold on. I just found something. When I pulled this engine mount off on this side, it was missing a large washer. I just found it. This is the washer that was missing for this engine mount. You can kind of, I don't know if you can see it, but there's one right there. That goes on the underside of this engine mount. Well, this one was gone. It's pretty well shot. I'll have to get a new one. But that's where that went. But yeah, you can just see how filthy this thing is. And there's our pump. For the short time I had this running in the previous video, the pumps didn't sound like they were the problem. I had topped off the hydraulic fluid at one point, and they didn't sound like there was anything wrong. Obviously, when I would fire it back up and try to run it, the oil that would have blown out of the input shaft was causing it to have low oil. So I didn't really run it out. The old timer that had this machine before me, it looks to me, in my personal opinion, like he actually did take fairly good care of it. So I'm thinking it's probably okay. I'm still gonna think about it though, see if I do want to just pull that pump anyhow. But now that we've got the engine pulled out, we can get this thing really good and clean. And I'm kind of debating if I maybe want to paint the inside of here while I'm at it. I mean, the rest of the machine seems so good so far. I think that might end up on the to-do list, to be honest with you. But apparently that thing has a lot more oil in it than I thought. No, that's not all engine oil. I'm just saying that. No, that's actually the bell housing was plumb full of hydraulic fluid. What we saw spilling out was spilling out from by the starter, or what I saw anyways. So yeah, that's all burnt hydraulic fluid mixing in with engine oil that is leaking out. I need to get some oil dry. Almost forgot, I was going to show you guys. So there's not a lot of wiring on this machine. Most of it's actually still pretty good. I've been replacing the wires that aren't so good. So like this bunch of wires here, this will all still get changed. But I'm probably going to strip all of this old sheathing off. It's kind of a pain in the butt because of the way they used it. But we'll see. There's really not much for wiring on here though. There's the, well, you can't really see it too good, but there's the instrument panel. And right there is where it came through the firewall. And then I had it set up so that it connects to two weatherproof connectors here. I wanted to use 8-pin Deutsch bulkhead connector, but I was not willing to pay how much it was going to cost me at the time. So I just went this route instead. Some people might not like that. Personally, I don't have an issue with it. They are weatherproof connectors. That's the big thing, is getting weatherproof connectors on there. So here's where we're at. I've got some decisions I got to make, some parts I got to order, and might see if I can find a gasket kit for that 1.1 liter Ford that came out. See if we can't do some gaskets on it while it's out as well. I have a lot, and I mean a lot of cleaning to do. So I think I'm gonna see about getting this machine prepped where we can pick it up, move it around, kind of tug it around to somewhere where we can pressure wash it. So the next time I have a warm day where I've got some time, I can get started on that. I'm gonna end the video off here for now. I know I had said that we were gonna get into the fuel system, but I think I'm gonna save that. We might just do a separate video where that's gonna get included as a whole. So thanks for watching, and stay tuned. There'll be probably quite a few more videos on this old Mustang. Thanks, guys.